No pipe, no well, no rain cloud building on the horizon. The ground has been dry for 4 straight days, and still, in the half-light before sunrise, you can hear it. A soft, regular, ticking into a trough. Drop, if you grew up trusting the obvious. This scene makes no sense. Water is supposed to come from infrastructure, from invoices, from plastic bottles stacked under fluorescent lights. That is the lie most people never examine. We were trained to believe water only counts when a company pumps it, filters it, brands it, and sends you the bill. So the moment the tap becomes fragile, most people feel helpless before they even become thirsty. But look closer. This water was pulled out of the night air, while the owner slept, not with a motor, not with a compressor, not with some glossy machine priced like a small emergency. This isn't some futuristic hack. That is another comforting myth people like to hide behind. If it were brand new, you could dismiss it. If it were experimental, you could wait for experts. But this is old knowledge, and that is the part that should irritate you a little. You've already seen this principle your entire life. On a glass sweating at the dinner table, on grass soaking your shoes at dawn, on a spider web holding beads of water, so neatly it looks engineered. So before anyone starts talking about designs and angles and materials, the first correction has to happen in your head. The air around you is not empty. It is not neutral space between you and the next object. It is carrying water right now, invisibly, quietly, whether you respect that fact or not. The real failure was never lack of access. It was a bad definition of where access begins. Here is the part that makes the excuse collapse. The raw material is not rare, and the math is not on the side of doubt. At any given moment, the atmosphere is holding roughly 37 billion gallons of fresh water, more than every river on Earth combined, just suspended above you where nobody sends a bill for it. And this is where the numbers get almost insulting. The parts list is not a machine. It is shade cloth mesh, 666 feet of it. The kind sitting in a garden center or hardware store, about $5. 4 sections of 1-inch PVC pipe for the frame, around $2. Maybe less if you pull from scrap. Zip ties, which most people already have buried in a kitchen drawer, or tossed in a garage bin. A plastic gutter section for the collection trough, $3 or $4. A few bricks or rocks to set the angle. Total, $10 to $14 all in. If the zip ties and bricks are already on your property, you are down to about $8. No specialized tools, no pump. But cheap only matters if the design actually respects physics. The mesh is doing the real labor, which is why the weave matters more than the frame. You want it tighter, closer to a window screen than a volleyball net. Not because it looks better, but because every gap is a missed chance for droplets to form and cling. Then the frame, 4 PVC sections into a rectangle, roughly 4 feet tall and 3 feet wide. Nothing precious about it. You aren't T-building cabinetry. You are building a surface that can stand up, hold tension, and stay put in a little wind. Then comes the part most people ruin without realizing it. They leave the mesh loose. It sags, water pools, and pooled water is lost time, lost runoff, lost collection. Pull it tight and zip tie it every 6 inches, along every edge, like stretching a drum skin. And if you lay it flat on the ground, you've basically built an evaporation tray. That is the trap. Water gathers, the sun comes up, and your harvest disappears into the same air it came from. So the whole system lives or dies on a small correction in angle, a tiny decision that changes the result, from interesting idea to actual water. And once you see that, you start noticing how many people fail, not because the method is false, but because they were off by a few inches and didn't know why. Here's the part people miss when they call this a neat little DIY trip. The frame angle, the gutter, the tubing, the evening setup, the dawn collection. None of that is really the story. The story is what gets exposed once something this simple starts producing water. Because the moment a basic mesh, tilted around 30 degrees, can pull usable moisture out of ordinary night air, the old myth starts to look suspicious. Not the myth that water is valuable. Think about the hierarchy hiding inside that assumption. Most people are trained to believe survival comes from paying a gatekeeper. A bill arrives, a meter spins, a truck delivers. A filter cartridge needs replacing. A machine hums in the corner, drawing power all night. You work first, then you buy back what nature was already carrying. Above your head, that is the arrangement. And once you see droplets forming on a passive screen while you sleep, you realize the product was never just water. Look at the routine in physical terms. At dusk, you walk outside, feel the breeze on your face. Point the frame into the wind, lift it a foot off the ground. Keep it out of the first flash of morning sun, and leave it alone. No engine noise, no fuel can, no trenching, no electric bill ticking upward in the dark. Overnight, the air cools, the mesh cools. With it, moisture condenses, droplets merge, gravity takes over. And by dawn there is water sitting in the trough, waiting for a hand to pick it up. And that is exactly where the financial split appears. One class of people owns infrastructure, licensing, distribution, and the habit in your mind that says utility must come from a system you pay monthly. The other class gets sold the moral speech. Work harder, budget better, consume responsibly. Accept rising costs as reality. This is how extraction hides in plain sight, not by inventing water, but by claiming exclusive authority over collection, treatment, delivery, and permission. Then effort gets romanticized. Wake up early, grind harder, take the overtime shift. Meanwhile, the family paying the bill is financing layers of ownership stacked above the actual resource. The mesh doesn't ask for your salary history, so when someone laughs at a trough under a screen, hear what they're really defending: a world where basic access must stay packaged, priced, and mediated. That is why tiny systems matter, not because they replace everything overnight, but because they reveal the pecking order. The winner is usually not the person working hardest. It is the person standing closest to the point of capture. This is the part where most people ruin it by overthinking. They start talking about full systems, emergency plans, long-term resilience, fine. But if you can't do one boring thing tomorrow morning, none of that matters. So here is the only move that counts first. Collect, filter, store. Nothing heroic. A setup this size can give you a litter. Sometimes two, sometimes more overnight. Stretch the mesh wider, something like 10 by 10 feet, and suddenly this stops looking like a clever experiment and starts looking like daily supply. A family of 4 needs roughly 2 liters of drinking water per person each day. In the right climate, that target is not fantasy, it is math. Now the practical question people always ask arrives immediately. Can you drink it? Usually, yes, but don't turn that into a slogan. Water pulled from the air begins cleaner than most surface water because it hasn't run through dirt, pipes, or standing puddles, animal waste, or farm runoff. It skipped a lot of the mess, but your mesh is still outside. Dust lands on it, traffic leaves residue. Take a plastic bottle from the recycling bin, cut the bottom off, turn it upside down so the neck points into a clean cup or jar. Then stack the layers the same way every time. Cotton first near the neck, then activated charcoal. Aquarium store, cheap, no drama. Then fine sand. Then one more thin layer of cotton on top. That is it. That tiny filter handles the ordinary ugliness. Grit, floating particles, a good chunk of the chemical concerns that you actually worry about. And if you want the extra margin, boil it, or use 1 drop of plain, unscented household bleach per liter. Wait 30 minutes and move on with your day. Not glamorous, not Instagram survival fantasy. That is the real break from the old habit, by the way. Not becoming self-sufficient, not giving a speech about systems. Just replacing one reflex instead of assuming every sip must arrive through a bill, a utility, a truck, a pipe, a permission structure. You train your hands to do one mechanical thing with what the night already gave you. Set the container, run the filter. Do that for 7 days and your brain starts seeing the scam differently. The air stops being empty space, your backyard stops being decorative, and the thing you were told required infrastructure starts dripping into a jar under its own weight. The stranger part is not that it works. Here is the promise, and it is smaller than the fantasy people sell you, which is exactly why it matters. This kind of build is not your escape hatch from reality. It won't make you rich. It won't replace every bill, every pipe, every system you depend on. What it can do is much more honest. It gives you a little room to breathe when the usual machine stutters. A slow drip into a clean container, a backup. That is how real resilience compounds. Not through one dramatic purchase, not through some apocalypse cosplay, but through small useful things sitting quietly in your life, until the day they are needed. A mesh panel, a bucket, morning condensation, a habit of checking what still works without permission, from a utility, a landlord, or a delivery truck. You build one practical tool, and it changes the way you see the air, the roofline, the grass at dawn, the cold side of metal before sunrise. Then the next tool becomes easier. Maybe you never need it in a crisis. Then you spent $12 to learn something real with your own hands. That is still a better return than most people get from the expensive illusions sold as security. So no, I'm not promising a miracle. I'm promising margin, survival space, one less point of failure, and in a world that keeps teaching dependence. That is not small at all.